Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sakura Unboxing. So, I have a very anticipated figure which I'm very excited for because of the theme. So, as you can tell, I kind of have a sort of sweets, fruity sort of theme going along, so that kind of gives a hint to what the figure is all about. Now, this figure wasn't without some grief, I'm not gonna lie, because of the amount of delays it had, and because it is a Chinese manufacturer. The month it's supposed to release, it releases roughly a month later in Japan, so I pretty much had to wait about 2 months because of the delays. But now the figure is in my hands and I'm very excited to open it up for you today, so let us get started with that. So right here in kind of this plastic packaging that she sort of came in is a very adorable figure that was an instant order for me because of the design and the sweets theme, of course, and that is the Princess Connect Redive Miyako Oyatsu no Jikan Nano version, 1/7 figure by Ribose. So yes, very cute character design overall, and I saw her on that sort of platter of fruits and sweets, and you know, I fell in love with her instantly. And now of course I don't know really anything about this series. I know it's a mobile game, it did have an anime, but yeah, I still wanted this of course for my Sweet Themes collection, so yeah, I'll get to unboxing her right now because I'm excited to see her, you know, out of her packaging. So moving to some general information about this figure. So this figure is manufactured by Ribose, and originally, if I'm not mistaken, she was supposed to release in February of 2023, but I'll pop up some of my emails regarding a change of release for this figure. So she got pushed from February 2023 to April 2023, and then from April 2023 into May of 2023. For the dimensions of this figure, she measures roughly 11.7 inches tall. Now moving on to where I bought this figure from. So I bought her off of AmiAmi, and on there she is discounted, so she is 23,560 yen, which is roughly 169 USD. So now moving on to shipping costs. So EMS was 9,100 yen, DHL was 12,266 yen, air parcel is 7,950 yen, surface parcel is 3,650 yen, and surface mail premium is 5,110 yen. So I do kind of want to talk about the shipping costs because it was definitely not what I was expecting. So of course these shipping costs are for the figure on its own. I originally did have her combined with another figure that was supposed to be released in May. Unfortunately, that figure got delayed, so I just ended up paying for EMS shipping for the figure. So yes, I feel like the shipping cost just kind of sucks if you get it off of AmiAmi if you do want to get this figure right away. Obviously, if you don't mind waiting, surface parcel is definitely the way to go. It's dirt cheap. But yeah, big shock to my system that this figure cost as much as it does in USD to ship on its own. So now we are moving to the AmiAmi box size, and she came in an AmiAmi size 140 box. Now, I think that's a little bit ridiculous for the size of this figure box. I definitely think it maybe should have been a 120 AmiAmi box. I don't have the exact measurements for an AmiAmi size 120, but I think that would have been a lot better than the AmiAmi size 140. So I'll hopefully have some pictures of the box with the, of course, the figure box and the inside, and maybe if I have that protective padding I can just show an example, but honestly I feel like just the size 140 box was kind of a waste. I probably should have asked AmiAmi customer support to possibly put her in a 120 box. You can ask them to do that, and you know, they'll say if it's possible or not. So that's just something to do if you really think that the shipping cost is very pricey for just getting a single figure. I definitely recommend doing that because you could save some money in the long run. So here we have the box, and it's a lot bigger in person, and the figure herself, like, she's a small character, but they made her absolutely massive, which I kind of like. So yeah, plastic packaging. I'm gonna quickly, you know, cut this open right now. So yeah, out of the box, it's a very nice design box overall. You do have some pictures of the figure, some information on the back. And yeah, I do kind of like the sort of like pattern that's on here and the colors. I think it looks very cute overall. Unfortunately, somehow my box got ripped a little bit on like the flap, so I'll have to be careful with that. But yeah, now I'm gonna free her from the packaging. Out of the packaging, and I already see how massive that delicious platter of pudding and whipped cream and fruit. I'm very excited for her. Again, I really like Ribose, and at least the figures they've done so far for, you know, quite a nice price, I'd say, overall. So yeah. Yeah, she's absolutely adorable. So I'm gonna quickly take her out of the packaging. So first, we start off with probably maybe one of my favorites just because my bias towards sweets, but this platter is absolutely ginormous. So it'll definitely take up a bunch of space on the shelf, but oh, the details on this are absolutely fantastic. There's some shading in the fruit, maybe a little bit in the whipped cream, I can't tell. The waffle little wing right here is some shading, and it looks absolutely delectable. I absolutely am in love with this base. Like, the plate even has some shading. And yeah, like the paintwork I feel like is like pretty much like perfect on this from my first impressions. Yeah, so nothing too wrong with the base. So yeah. Okay, I probably shouldn't. Yeah. The one thing though with this base is it didn't come wrapped in plastic, so I'd probably be careful with it, because, you know, if you are moving and stuff, it could jiggle around, so maybe wrap it in some plastic to kind of protect it. And especially with maybe the cherries on top with the stems, they could possibly break off, but thankfully nothing happened to them, so I'm appreciative about that. So yeah, here she is out of the packaging, and like absolutely fantastically done. I really love the design, and like obviously as I'm quickly unboxing this, I don't notice anything too damaged or anything. Some areas of note to probably be careful with are possibly the ends of the scarf, and like especially the little star details on her dress. They definitely look like they're the type to come off. Thankfully they are made of like a flexible material, but I'd still be wary of that. But yeah, she looks excellent. The hair sculpt looks fantastic, and I did have trouble taking one plastic off. I literally just ripped it out. I think the scarf is supposed to come off, but I struggled with that, so I just ripped it off. And what's another interesting thing I saw was that her legs are actually transparent at the end, and heck, even her shoes are, which is interesting. I don't know if that's supposed to be the character's design, but yeah, fantastic overall. And I do have, of course, her extra little pouty face, which is cute, so yeah, overall, maybe it shouldn't be. Okay, actually, I have one more step to do before I put her on the base. And that is, of course, the massive spoon that she comes with, which looks absolutely fantastic. Yeah, it's got a nice gold to it. I really love just the design of it overall. The bow is a flexible material, which is nice. And it should, yeah, you just kind of wiggle this out. It's supposed to come in 2 separate pieces. So yeah, it's 2 separate pieces, and then you just slot that into her hand. So yeah, I apologize for that cut. My camera actually overheated, so yeah, that kind of sucks. But thankfully it was towards the end when I already had her fully assembled and I just moved that blister packaging out of the way. But yes, she looks absolutely adorable with this massive spoon. You can adjust it a little bit by twisting it in her hand if you don't like it touching parts of the figure for paint transfer. But yeah, also the top parts of the spoon are also kind of flexible. So yeah, and she does have a sort of large plastic peg, which I might worry about. I do prefer the metal pegs because over time, the plastic could bend possibly, but yeah. So putting her on the base is straightforward. It's just this one large gap in there, so I'll put her in right now. So, as you can tell from how much I'm smiling, this is fantastic. It's, absolutely massive. I feel like she's also a pretty nice size overall for being a small character. And this base just, I feel like, steals the show, and yeah, looks absolutely amazing. Maybe some people would like the base to be a little bit smaller. It definitely will take up a whole bunch of room, but I absolutely love the way she looks. Very glad that I picked her up at the end of the day just for the sweets theme, and yeah, I feel like she might be one of my new favorites in my collections, maybe my new favorite 1/7. I mean, I have a bias for the sweets. But yeah, overall, assembly is pretty easy. Most of the stuff, she already comes together. Her pigtails, they do come off at kind of an angle of sorts. Those are easy to put in. But yeah. So yeah, overall, the assembly process for this was actually pretty easy, I'd say. Removing some of the plastic was a little bit of a pain, especially the one under her scarf. I don't know why, if that's supposed to come off again, or it just, I have to literally rip that plastic off, which I tend not to do. So yeah, she pretty much comes fully assembled with the base. You thankfully don't have to put anything on it. And yeah, it's pretty easy overall, not too painful of a process, and you get an absolutely adorable character on a gorgeously designed base overall. It might be one of my favorite figure bases in my collection, so yeah. Now we'll get into, of course, showing the assembly off camera, which thankfully won't be too painful to do. And yeah, so I'm very excited to show you guys some more details about this figure. So now we're moving on to the figure box itself, and I do quite like it overall. The design is nice. I do quite like the color scheme as well. It definitely was a little bit bigger than I thought it would be. I don't know, because I think she was a small character. I was probably expecting a smaller box. But I feel like it kind of gets the job done with protecting her base, her extra spoon accessory, as well as the figure herself. So yeah, overall, I'd say it's a nicely designed box, and I feel like it gets, you know, the job done with protecting all of the contents on the inside. So now we're moving on to the assembly process for the figure, and it's overall very straightforward, I'd say, even though these instructions are in Japanese. So yeah, it tells you how to put the figure together as well as how to swap out the faceplates. So yes, first we're starting of course with the base, which is definitely my favorite part of the figure. And it has to be probably one of my new favorite figure bases in my collection. And I'd say it's pretty much flawless overall. There really isn't any painting or sculpting defects on this, and I do love the glossiness in some areas as well as the shading if my camera can pick it up properly. But yeah, fantastic base overall. Next we have Miyako herself, who is absolutely adorable. I love the pose and the sculpt for this figure. Yeah, she just looks absolutely adorable. And yeah, so looking into the anime for this series, I found out that she's actually supposed to be a ghost, and that's why her legs are transparent at the end. So yeah, very cute character design overall, and I do quite like some of the other Princess Connect character designs, but she definitely stands out thanks to her base for the figure. And yeah, I'd say, you know, paintwork and sculpt is pretty much very well done for this figure. After that, we have the spoon, which is also very well done. Very massive overall. I feel like you could use this to actually eat some sweets, but I wouldn't really recommend doing that, of course. And yeah, this spoon actually has a few flexible areas, such as the top. The bow is also quite flexible as well. And yeah, very nice sculpting, and I like the flow of the bow overall. It makes it feel a little bit more dynamic. And yeah, it's just very nice overall, very massive. So yeah, I quite like this spoon overall in terms of design and paintwork. Now, it's very easy to just take apart. It does come in 2 pieces to put this into the figure's hand. Now with the assembly, I actually did it out of order from the instructions. You can pretty much do this in any order. But for the sake of this video and to make it a little bit more easier to see what I'm doing, you are supposed to technically put the spoon in her hand first and then put her on the base, but for the sake of this video, I ended up putting her in the base first and then putting the spoon in her hand. So yeah, it's pretty easy to put her in. It is a pretty thick plastic peg, which I hope holds up in the long run. And then she has the hole in her hand where you put the spoon in. So you have to do angle this a little bit, and then you just swivel it in. That's like the best way to get it into her hand. And yeah, and then the top part's pretty easy. You just plug it in. And you know, for this particular figure, I did have to adjust the height of the spoon, so it is pretty close to the top of her hand just because it doesn't fit on my shelf quite well. So yeah, as I can show you guys, it is supposed to be a little bit higher on the figure, like probably there, but unfortunately I have to kind of keep the top part a little bit close to the top of her hand because I can't fit this on my shelf properly. So yeah, that just shows how big the figure is. Now we're moving on to the different faceplates and how to do that. So this part was maybe, it's not too hard, but you know, it does require a little bit of work. So yeah, you take the little pigtails out of the back of her head, you take the front of the hair off, and then you're supposed to wiggle it out a little bit and then pull the faceplate out. Again, I don't know if the scarf 100% comes out, but I'd say definitely the best way to do it is this way, which is just taking the head off completely and then doing it this way. Because the head does kind of come off the body easily, and you do have to be careful with that because you could hit the hair to the back of the leg and scratch some paint off there. And yeah, so this is the best way to kind of remove and replace the face plates. So yeah, you do have to wiggle the scarf a little bit down and then just pull that out. And now showing off the faces. They're absolutely adorable. Again, I can't really pick which one I want to display her with. I do want to display her actually with the default one, but the second faceplate is definitely adorable as well. Now, the first faceplate unfortunately didn't come with some issues. There is like kind of a black mark on her left cheek right here, if my camera can focus a little bit better. But thankfully the scarf and her hair actually cover that up, which is nice. And unfortunately there was also like a little black dot under her right eye for the first faceplate. The pouty faceplate is pretty much perfect. So yeah, it's pretty easy. You do have to push the scarf back up to kind of lock the faceplate in place. And then putting obviously the pigtails back on. and then putting the head back into the headless body I have for the figure. And I also did actually remove the spoon. I would recommend do that before taking her entire head off, just to make things a little bit easier and so it's just not in the way. But yeah, overall, very easy assembly process, and at the end of the day, you get a very adorable, sweet themed figure who, yeah, I love very much overall. So now moving on to figure B-roll, and I have to say that this is one of my top favorite figures for 2023. I think my bias with the sweets kind of helps to put this figure in its spot, but it's just so fantastically done overall, and it just cements the reason why Ribose is one of my top favorite figure manufacturers, because their quality and prices, I have to say, are pretty great overall. And I feel like my camera cannot do this figure justice. It's definitely one you have to see in person. The sculpt work is fantastic, from her dress to the way her spoon is sculpted to, of course, pretty much like my favorite part of this figure, which is the base. It's definitely the reason why I pre-ordered this figure in the first place without any knowledge of the character herself. I really love the shading that was used on the base in some areas, and just the glossiness in some areas and the matte finish in some other areas I think are very well done. And yeah, it's just overall a fantastically done figure. Yeah, her one faceplate, the default one, you know, it did have like a little bit of like a black spot, but it's very subtle, and thankfully the scarf in her hair does block it. And of course there was a sort of a black dot under her right eye, but again, it's very minuscule, and unless you look up really close then you won't see it. And yeah, this is just, I don't know, like I unboxed her and, you know, I feel like my breath was just taken away by this figure. Some people might not like how big the base is, and I do admit it is definitely a base that will take up a lot of space, and the figure is definitely a lot taller and bigger than I thought it would be, so, you know, just be careful about that. You can once again adjust the spoon to kind of snugly fit it on your shelf, if that helps in any way, because, yeah, again, it will take up quite a bit of space, but, you know, I feel like this is a figure I would love to display in the long term just for the design. And it's definitely in my top 3 favorite sweet theme figures that I have, which I'll actually show up in the size comparison, my top 3 figures for my sweet theme collection, including her. I guess there is one area of the figure that I noticed was a little bit rough that will hopefully be shown in a bit. But you can't really see it because, you know, she pretty much covers that area, which is good. But yeah, sculpt is overall very well done. And yeah, just this is the only problem area, which is the hair. Kind of an ugly, like, little crack in there, and just, it wasn't really blended well into the hair. So that's just the one issue, but again, you can't really see it because she completely blocks it. And yeah, just overall, this figure is very fantastic overall. I'm very happy to have gotten her for my Sweet Themes collection. And yeah, so that's all I have to really say. I really love her. Again, I highly recommend picking up this figure if you really do love Sweet Themes figure or just very cute character designs overall. Size comparison time, so we have Miyako next to the Nendoroid Hatsune Miku 15th anniversary Nendoroid. Next we have the Silver Ash York Spice figure 1/8 scale by Gutsma Art Shanghai. After that we have a 1/7 figure, which is the Marino Trueless by Wing. Tried to keep the food theme, but you know, it kind of crashed in some areas. Next we have my two 1/6 sweet theme figures, which are the Mauve 1/6 figure by Native and Rocket Boy, and then the Shiratama Komame figure by Native. So yes, my favorite sweet theme figures in my collection. And lastly, we have the Hatsune Miku My Dear Bunny version by Fring, a 1/4 scale. So yes, that is the size comparison for the Miyako figure compared to a whole bunch of other scale figures. So now we're moving on to the overall thoughts for this figure, and they're overwhelmingly positive. I am just absolutely in love with this figure. The base is definitely a standout for this figure. I think it was just so fantastically done. There was a lot of love, I feel, put into this base. I really don't notice a single sort of paint defect on mine. Again, you know, copies may vary, but for me, this figure is just absolutely flawless. I feel like Ribose, again, they just have such very nice quality figures for their prices, and I'm just, again, blown away by what they have put out in the market so far. And yes, Miyako herself, her sculpt is so very well done. All the details on her are painted very well and sculpted very well, and she just looks so happy, and every time I just look at her on my shelf, she makes me smile. And yeah, so again, it's just very well executed figure of this character. So now moving on to like some maybe cons and nitpicks. So I feel like these might be like nitpicks personally, and some of these don't even have to do with the figure itself. So the first one is that, well, with the figure, the hair sculpting, like on the inside of the hair, is a little bit rough, but of course her entire body kind of blocks that area, so it's really not that bothersome. So lastly, I guess a personal nitpick that was just, you know, a big shock to me when I saw the invoice for this figure, and that is of course the shipping price from Ami Ami. I think it was very expensive of a shipping cost for this figure. Like 9,100 yen is quite pricey, and that's just getting, again, the figure by herself, and I do feel like they kind of like wasted some space with the box, and again, I should have probably asked for a smaller sized Ami Ami box for this figure to kind of lower that shipping cost. So yeah, maybe you can find her someplace cheaper than Ami Ami unless you don't mind waiting surface, but yeah, I guess my biggest nitpick for this figure is overall just the shipping cost from when I got her off of Ami Ami. I do think it's a little bit ridiculous overall. So now moving on to aftermarket prices for the figure. So I didn't see a single copy of her on Yahoo Japan auctions. I did see a customized figure case for the figure, which I thought was pretty interesting. So yeah, there is that, I guess, if you want to kind of protect the figure from dust and such. But I did see, of course, a couple of listings on Yahoo Japan Shopping, so there are some where she is under 200 USD, some that are close to retail price, and some that are a little less than retail price, but yeah, she hasn't really gone down specifically as far as I can tell. Some people are selling her for over 200 USD, which I would definitely skip. And I saw one listing on Mercari Japan that has her for pretty much close to retail price. Now, of course, eBay, I would definitely skip. People are just really selling her for way more than she should, so yeah, prices on there are ridiculous, so it's overall a skip for eBay. And I did see that she's still on Ami Ami for discounted price, so of course there's that option if you want to pick her up from there. So yeah, I pretty much, of course, recommend picking up this figure for 200 USD or less. Definitely don't get it for over 200 USD base price. So once again, I feel like this is a fantastic figure done by Ribose. Again, I really don't have any negative feelings towards this figure. Obviously, there are some nitpicks, but thankfully they are really not noticeable and pretty well hidden overall. And yeah, so if you really love the Sweets theme or you know anything about the character or the series she's from, I highly recommend picking this figure up. So yes, this figure of course is again up on Ami Ami, and you know, if you want to put her on Surface, I'd say that's fantastic overall. And yeah, so I overall hope that my review helps you with your decision if you are interested in picking up this very sweet figure. So yes, here is the figure in all of her glory. It's absolutely grand, I feel. Especially for how small the character she is, I feel like this figure is massive. I feel like she's also a very nice size overall for being a small character. And just the details on this are absolutely gorgeous. I am in love with this figure. It's definitely one of the top favorites in my collection. Very easy assembly overall, which I do appreciate. And also with the character herself, you know, you just have to remove some plastic. Her pigtails, they do come off. They're already like assembled on the figure, but they do come off, which is nice. And I think that's mostly for swapping the face out. And yeah, the spoon, absolutely massive and gorgeously designed. And I can't give enough praises to the base. It really looks like I can just take a fork to it and eat all of the little items on here. So this is a fantastic figure. I mean, I'm sure my overall thoughts will go on to maybe some nitpicks I have with it, because I haven't looked at this figure very much up close. But I feel like I already recommend this figure. It's fantastically done. Ribose is becoming probably one of my favorite figure manufacturers because of their overall quality that I have, even though I have two of them. This is like my second one. The first is the Minahoshi-chan. I think their figures are fantastic for the overall quality and price. So yeah, I'm very excited for some of their other figures in the future. There is the Sweet Theme Planet line of figures that they're doing, which I am so excited for. I cannot wait to collect all of those girls. So I'm overall just happy to have another figure for my Sweet Theme collection. I feel like this one kind of competes with the Shiratama Komame and the Mauve figure for my favorite Sweet Themes figure because, you know, they all have various sweets on them to fit their sort of theme that I like. But this one is definitely up there with my favorites just because of how grand this base is and just the overall sort of composition for this. So yeah, very excited. I'm so glad that, you know, I feel like she was worth the wait overall. So yeah, very excited to have this figure in my collection. So yes, that overall concludes this video. It was a pretty easy and pretty relaxing unboxing to me. And yeah, so I'm excited to see what your guys' thoughts on this Sweets theme figure is. I definitely think she looks fantastic in person overall. And yeah, I hope this video does help if you are interested in picking up the figure. And I hope you all have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or night wherever you are, and take it easy. Goodbye! So of course, before I end the video, I would like to give a shout out to my Sakura supporter patrons, and that includes Simon Ta. Thank you so much again for taking the time to donate to my Patreon, and I hope you do like the art piece that I made for you. So yes, I wish you all the best. And yeah, that overall concludes the video at this point, so I hope you all have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or night wherever you are, and once again, take it easy. Goodbye!